Man, you ever been out on a road so hot it feels like the asphalt's gonna melt your shoes? That's where this story starts. Out on Route 17, middle of nowhere, Arizona, sun beating down like it's got a personal grudge. Picture this. Cars screaming by, not a soul slowing down. And there's this guy, Ray Tucker, crumpled next to his busted-up Harley, hands over his face like he's trying to hold the world together. You can tell he's not just stranded, it's broken. Like life just sucker-punched him and left him there to bleed. Most folks would have kept driving, eyes glued to the horizon, pretending they didn't see. But not Maggie Harper. She's a single mom, barely keeping her auto shop afloat in a dusty little town called Redstone. And when she saw Ray, something in her gut said, "Stop." So she did, slamming her beat-up Ford pickup onto the shoulder so hard the gravel flew. Maggie's daughter, Sophie, all of 12, poked her head up from the passenger seat, squinting. "Mom, what are we doing? He looks kinda rough." Maggie didn't answer, just grabbed a water bottle from the dash half empty, warm as spit and hopped out, boots crunching dirt. She walked straight up to Ray, no hesitation, like the sun wasn't trying to cook her alive. He looked up, face streaked with sweat, and something wetter, eyes hollow like he'd seen too much. Maggie shoved the bottle at him. "Drink," she said, not soft, but firm, like she wasn't taking no for an answer. He took it, chugged it down, and for a second, they just stared at each other, two strangers on a road nobody else cared about. Maggie crouched by the Harley, her hands moving like they knew the bike better than its owner. She'd grown up in her dad's shop, grease in her blood, and she could spot a dead clutch cable and a leaking oil pan from 10 feet away. "This thing's not going anywhere," she muttered, pulling a wrench from the toolbox she always kept in the truck. Ray blinked, voice cracked. "Why'd you stop?" "Nobody else did." Maggie didn't look up, just kept working, bolts clanking. "Because nobody else did," she shot back, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. The heat pressed down, her shirt soaked through, but she didn't stop till that engine coughed and growled back to life. Ray stared, like she'd just pulled off a miracle. Then it spilled out of him, raw and jagged. "I buried my brother yesterday. He was all I had." Maggie paused, wiped her hands on her jeans, and met his eyes. "Then don't let this bike die with him. Ride it for him. No pity, just truth." Ray nodded, barely, like a spark flickered back in him. Maggie didn't wait for thanks. She just turned, climbed back in the truck, and drove off, Sophie's wide eyes watching her mom like she was some kind of hero. That night, Maggie locked up her shop, Harper's Auto, a sagging relic her dad left her. Bills were piling up, shelves were half empty, and the bank was breathing down her neck. But her mind kept drifting back to that moment on the road, the way Ray's voice broke, the weight of his grief. She didn't do it for a pat on the back. It was just who she was. What she didn't know was that Ray Tucker wasn't just some lone rider. He was the leader of the Iron Vipers, a motorcycle club that made folks in Redstone whisper and lock their doors. And by the next sunset, her quiet little world was about to get turned upside down. The next day, Redstone was its usual sleepy self, kids riding bikes, old-timers jawing at the diner, shopkeepers sweeping sidewalks. Then it hit. A low rumble, like thunder creeping in from the desert. Heads turned, conversations stopped. The sound grew, shaking windows, setting dogs barking. Then they saw it. 30 Harleys, black and chrome, rolling into town like a storm. The Iron Vipers, led by Ray, crested the hill, engines roaring, leather vests flashing their patches under the fading sun. Redstone froze. Parents pulled kids inside. Old man Carter at the diner muttered, "Trouble's here." Nobody'd seen anything like this, not in a town where the biggest news was a busted stoplight. Maggie heard the rumble from her shop. She stepped outside, wiping grease off her hands, Sophie right behind her. Her stomach twisted as the bikes lined up in front of her shop, engines idling like a pack of wolves. Ray swung off his Harley, standing tall now, no trace of the broken man from yesterday. His eyes, shielded by dark sunglasses, locked on Maggie. The town held its breath, peeking from windows, waiting for chaos. But Ray didn't move like a man looking for trouble. He moved like he owned the street. He pulled off his glasses, and his voice cut through the growl of engines, rough but steady. "Y'all don't know me. You see the patches, hear the stories, and you think you've got us figured out. You don't." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ray kept going, eyes on Maggie. "Yesterday, I was done ready to let the road take me. Then this woman stopped. She gave me water, fixed my bike, told me to keep going. Didn't ask my name, didn't care about the patch. She saw a man breaking and gave him a reason to stand. Maggie's chest tightened. She wanted to shrink back, but Sophie's hand on her arm kept her rooted. Ray reached into his vest, pulled out a worn patch red and black, frayed at the edges. The crowd leaned in, some gasping. It was his brother's, cut from a viper's vest, a relic of loyalty and loss. This was his, Ray said, voice catching. I was supposed to carry it. But it belongs with her. He stepped forward, boots heavy on the pavement, and pressed the patch into Maggie's hand. Your family now? Not 'cause you asked, 'cause you earned it. Sophie whispered, Mom, that's big. Maggie couldn't speak, the patch heavy as iron in her palm. Ray turned to the crowd. Anyone messes with Maggie Harper, they answer to us. That's a promise. The Vipers revved their engines, a deafening salute, and Redstone felt the ground shake. But that wasn't the end. The bikes didn't peel out. Engines cut off, one by one, and the Vipers moved not with menace, but with purpose. They hauled toolkits and crates off their bikes, leather creaking, boots thudding. Before anyone could blink, they were tearing into Maggie's shop. Rusted bay doors came down, replaced with sleek steel. Shingles flew off the roof, new ones nailed in their place. Sparks flashed as they ground away rot, rebuilt shelves, rolled in a gleaming workbench. Sophie clapped, eyes wide, as a Viper wheeled in an air compressor Maggie could never have afforded. The town gawked. Mrs. Whitman, who'd always snubbed Maggie, whispered, What in God's name? Old man Carter just shook his head. They're building her a damn castle. By dusk, Harper's Auto was reborn, fresh paint. New sign reading, Harper's Auto, haven for all riders. Maggie watched, throat tight, as strangers she'd been taught to fear poured their sweat into her father's legacy. Ray worked alongside them, hauling beams, swinging a hammer, glancing at Maggie now and then like he was making sure she saw it. She did. And when the last bolt went in, the Vipers lined up, revved their bikes, and roared off into the night, leaving Redstone stunned and Maggie holding a patch that felt like it carried the weight of 1,000 promises. The next morning, word spread like wildfire. Folks who'd never set foot in Maggie's shop started showing up. A farmer with a coughing truck. A kid with a busted carburetor. They came for fixes but stayed for coffee, for stories, for the sight of Vipers laughing with Sophie, or showing a teenager how to wrench a bolt. The town's whispers changed. Maggie wasn't just the widow scraping Bish was the woman who'd stopped for a Viper and changed everything. Even Mrs. Whitman, queen of the HOA and Maggie's longtime nemesis, showed up with a flat tire and a tight smile. Heard you're the best now, she said, voice clipped. Maggie just nodded, popping the tire off in 10 minutes flat. Always was, she said, tossing the wrench down with a grin. Mrs. Whitman's jaw twitched, but she paid and left without a word. Sophie giggled. She hates you, Mom, but she's scared of you now. Days later, Ray rolled back into town, alone this time, a trailer hitched to his bike. Redstone's eyes followed him, curious but less afraid. He stopped at Maggie's shop, pulled back the trailer's cover, and revealed a Harley that stole the air from her lungs. Black as midnight, chrome blazing, with an etching on the gas tank, a mother and daughter, wrapped in flames, and the words, Courage forges family. Sophie gasped. Mom, that's us. Maggie's knees wobbled. Ray's voice was low, steady. We built this for you. A bike as tough as the woman who stopped when nobody else did. Maggie shook her head, voice breaking. I can't. This is too much. Ray stepped closer. You gave me my road back. This is yours. He pressed the keys into her hand, and when she fired it up, the roar shook Main Street. She laughed, loud and free, Sophie cheering behind her. The town clapped slow at first, then wild, like they were waking up to something bigger. But the real storm came a week later. Noon on a Saturday, the ground started shaking again. Not 30 bikes, this time 120. The iron Vipers flooded Redstone, a sea of leather and steel, their engines a symphony of power. Shopkeepers froze, kids pointed, and Maggie stepped outside, Sophie clinging to her. Ray led the pack, dismounting with a weight that silenced the street. He raised a hand, and every Viper scarred, weathered, unbreakable took off their helmets and bowed their heads to Maggie. The town gasped. Sophie whispered, Mom, they're bowing to you. Maggie's heart pounded, the patch in her pocket burning against her skin. Ray's voice boomed. Redstone, listen up. You thought you knew us, taught you knew her. You were wrong. This woman stopped for me when I was nothing. She fixed my bike, my soul, and told me to ride. She's family. No harm touches her. No debt buries her. She opened her door to me, and now it's open to all of us. The crowd was dead silent. Then applause broke out, first from a kid, then Mrs. Whitman, then the whole damn town. Maggie stood there, grease on her hands, Sophie beaming, and for the first time, she wasn't invisible. Ray leaned in, voice low. They'll never forget this, Maggie. Neither will you. The Vipers roared off, leaving a silence louder than their engines. Redstone wasn't the same. Maggie wasn't the same. She'd stopped for a stranger, and it cracked the town open, made them question their fears, their judgments, their cold shoulders. Weeks later, Maggie sat on that Harley, Sophie behind her, the etching glowing in the sunset. She twisted the throttle, felt the rumble, and smiled. This isn't about bikes, Soph, she said. It's about seeing someone hurting and choosing to stop. Sophie hugged her tight. It's about kindness, Mom. It's stronger than anything. And it was. The shop thrived, the town softened, and every so often, a Viper would roll through, tip their helmet, and keep going. Maggie kept that patch in her pocket, a reminder that one small act could move a mountain or an army. So what do you think? Was Maggie just lucky, or did her kindness rewrite the rules? Should Redstone have welcomed the Vipers? Or were they right to be scared at first? Drop a comment. Tell me your take. Have you ever stopped for someone when nobody else did? Subscribe if you're new, hit that bell, and let's keep talking about what really makes a community. Because out here, in the dust and heat, Maggie Harper proved one thing. Kindness doesn't just when it roars.